The Smackdown in Sactown, one for the books as the Celtics blow the friggin' doors off the Kings and reignite our love for the game of basketball. The Jays were scintillating, everyone was great in their role, and perhaps the Jaylen quotes that emerged yesterday aren't as panic-worthy as initially proposed. All of that and much, much more next on First to the Floor.
Who was going to be first to the floor here? And it was Marcus Smart, as he usually is.
Brown drives, layup on the glass.
That's not the first time we've seen a superstar in green and white sacrifice the body.
Welcome in to another episode of First to the Floor. Ben Vallis here. Thank you for joining us. Hope you're doing well. Wow, I mean... Jake, I think we all needed that, buddy. We all needed that one. What's up? How you doing, man?
I'm good, mate. We're back. Man, I've been pretty good at remaining measured throughout this season, but
You have been.
I am not. I like today I was you're thinking about the game all day, like the Butterflies pregame. I'm riding the emotional roller coaster like I wasn't earlier in the year. This kind of turmoil between the Jaylen stuff and these terrible losses. We needed this one. It feels good. I have a whiskey. I'm feeling great, man.
Yes, Jake has a whiskey. I have a seltzer. One drink is much cooler than the other, but we're both celebrating. We're both toasting. Certainly when I sat down for this one, for the most part since the playoffs last year, this was the most concentrated feeling of like, we need to win this game. I can't remember how acutely aware I was of that feeling up until the playoffs last year. Was this the best performance since the All-Star break, Jake?
The Cleveland game that they won was very impressive as well. They dominated that one with the fake Donovan Mitchell comeback. I think it's probably a tie between those two. As good as the Philly game was, there was the Jayson Tatum had a stinker for the most part outside of the game winner. But this was from top to bottom a complete team win. Everybody contributed. We saw everything that we've been asking for, that we want to see, that we know is in there. Tick, tick, tick. Defense, ball movement, the right type of threes, all of the above. Thank you, Jay.
Oh yeah,
Let's go.
Let's get into main takeaways, Jake. Like everything was back. The defense was back. The D was engaged and flying around. None of that floppy D. This was an engaged D that was standing to attention, sticking to, like, specific to the actions that the Kings run, sticking to those cutters that run and operate so well off Sabonis. Very Jokic-like in that sense, but Sabonis is a little more cunning, it seems, in his attack of the rim if those cutters aren't working well for him. So of all games to have Rob Williams back to sort of drop off, he can sag off of Sabonis because he's not a particularly good outside shooter. And we were so successful in the minutes where Rob was on the floor. I've got a clip of what I think is the perfect defensive possession for the Celtics here, as we see the Kings. If you're listening, you really need to watch this on YouTube. We see the Kings bring the ball up, and immediately the switching, Grant digs and immediately gets back out to the corner there. Grant perfectly navigates the Sabonis screen. Rob challenges the drive. Grant again right up on Sabonis. There's good screen navigation there, and the Kings advantageously get Derek White on Sabonis. Rob, the timing of the help was perfect, and Grant comes over, closes off the passing lane, and it's Malcolm Brogdon in slow transition for the Celtics, but an excellent defensive possession. And that's just one example of the absolutely stellar, absolutely perfect defense. Like, they're back. Well, I talked about that movie Hook, where they're like rubbing the paint off of Robin Williams' face. Like, there you are, Peter. There you are. Like, there they are. They're back. It's so exciting, Jake. We'll get to the offense. Defensively, what stood out to you in this game other than it was like flawless?
This Kings team has the best quotation marks offense of all time. Best offense in the NBA this season. I understand, the naysayers, the haters, they're going to say Kings were on a back-to-back, end of a road trip. Well, the Celtics were on the end of a road trip as well, and everybody was killing the Celtics for losing a back-to-back, missing 3 key players as well.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you watch this game, if you're not just box score watching, if you watch this game, the Kings came out with like a serious purpose. They were hitting some baloney, some bullshit.
They
Some
really
ridiculous
were.
stuff. They really were. Whether it was De'Aaron Fox, like literally like first possession or second possession, step back 3. Davion Mitchell going off. Terrence Davis starting to percolate. To quote Mark Jones, I did consume the Kings broadcast today, and he always has some great ones. But like this is the best offense in the league, and they showed why in the first half. Like, it's really difficult to deal with all the handoffs. Everybody's moving. De'Aaron Fox is a handful in transition. They have the firepower, and the C's were locked in. And like, this is why the measured people, which was me until kind of recently, haven't had too many concerns, because when they are locked in, they have one of the best defenses in the NBA, and his name is Robert Williams.
Oh, he's back, baby. He's back. The Time Lord returneth.
Yeah, baby.
So good. So glad to see that guy back. And, obviously he didn't start. He came off the bench. And as soon as he popped onto our screens, I think it was goosebumps for, not necessarily even Celtics fans as invested as we are, but just all of, quote unquote Celtics Nation, knowing, what we've been missing all of this time. To see that man, that beautiful man, check in is amazing. What do you think about Rob Williams off the bench there, Jay? Because I think he played, 20 minutes?
Perfect.
Like just over 20 minutes.
Perfect.
And suddenly, like, your backup big isn't Luke Cornett. It's not Blake Griffin, who I love, or Mike Muscala, who I am learning to love. It's the freaking Time Lord. He's your backup big. Like, that's the way of the future, right?
This is perfect. The way that they've managed, there was an extra 3 minutes that we didn't have to play because we actually held on to a big lead, as we should have done.
Didn't look
so
like
many
we were
more
going to
times.
for a second, but
It got
I
down to
digress.
12. We missed a lot of free throws today.
We did.
Looking at you, Jason, outside of having an incredible game. This is perfect. This is exactly what it should look like for the remainder of the regular season. I don't think they need to go back to double bigs even when the playoffs start. Maybe against Milwaukee when they're running out their Giannis, Brook Lopez lineup, you want to go with this. But other than that, bringing Rob off the bench works great. He has chemistry with D. White. Man, the rim pressure, like we talk about, go to the rim, get these paint touches. Rob makes it so much easier because the gravity of his role is there is no gravity with Horford. He pops. Grant 0. Blake, love you, 0. Scala, pop. Cornett, love you, no gravity. Can't go up quickly. Like, there's just it was just as night and day. The first pick and roll, it was like, oh,
Derek
people
White,
are
ball
going
handler.
with him. They're going with him. There's space to attack on a pick and roll. It cannot be overstated, and it almost makes me mad that they were even considering pushing Rob to 30 minutes the way they were throughout the season, because it is so obvious how important he is. Like, the numbers, the eye test. This is the only way we win the title, probably.
Yeah, and like, try and get through the first round with Rob playing like sub 22 minutes and him coming off the bench. I'm not saying anything new here, but it means that, first of all, it puts us in a position to start Derek White and then to continue to play Derek White, who saw, thank God, some fourth quarter minutes in this game, because
37.
We love double big. It's been successful. We've seen, pockets of success with double big even this year, post Ime Udoka. But Rob off the bench with Derek White having more of a prominent role, a starting role even, it leaves a continued pocket of space for Malcolm Brogdon to play as well. Sammy Buckets, Sam Hauser was maybe the most notable omission from the rotation. We might be a little too early in the podcast to get to Sam Hauser, but we need to, because he's been vital for the team through stretches of this season. But yeah, the big story is that the Celtics, they came out, they returned to the play the right way Celtics. They were zipping around on defense, and that connectedness on defense really led to the same thing offensively. And it's been so long since we've seen it play out that way that it was once again a surprise to finally see it bear out that way. But that was absolutely the case. They started off with incredible defense. Like you said, Jake, the Kings were hitting some shit.
Dude,
and they
come
just
on.
continued to defend the right way and not hang their heads when Terrence Davis or whoever, or Davion Mitchell, who's not like a known good three-point shooter, hits some bullshit. And they just continue to fight and play the right way despite that. And then offensively, the chemistry was born out of that, I thought.
I think that defense is the key to it all. Like the way that they get stops, it makes it easier to get and run. I feel like the Kings almost brought out the best Celtics in a way because they like to get up and down. And sometimes, another team's getting up and down. The pace of this game was insanity. Insanity all the way through pretty much. I was very impressed by the Kings to have that in them after playing in Utah last night. Ben, I have hope that the Rockets loss, the Utah blown lead, is there a little bit of, magic, poetic, the stars aligning? Last year it was the Knicks game, RJ Barrett, banker to win. Danny Ainge takes over the Utah Jazz. He's the one who, he takes our coach off the bench. He throws the zone at us, makes us blow this 20-point lead. We got the Jaylen stories. Backs against the wall, narrative, media-wise. Everybody's every podcast you listen to is reveling in the Celtics' demise.
Yes. I can't listen to them anymore. I subscribe to this narrative, Jake. You got me. Hook, line, and sinker. I'm sold. Where can I buy the book?
Well, let's see. Because maybe this is what this is the point where they're like, all right, enough. Playoffs are coming. Sick of hearing all this shit on First Take, wherever it may be. We know we're the best team in the league. Let's go out and stomp the best offense in the NBA.
We've got a listener here on the live stream, Chol, saying the Celtics did very well, as indeed they did. Boston is still my pick for the NBA title, in my opinion. Love to hear it. I want to get back in that mind space, mindset.
Mind space, mind head.
Yeah. Don't know if that works. Anyway, you know what I'm trying to say. We've been burnt so much so recently that as much as I want to believe the Celtics will win the title, it's been a rough stretch. That said, 4-2, it turns out, on this road trip, which is incredible given, with the Rockets game, didn't necessarily look like it was going to turn out to be a net positive for the Celtics, and yet here we are. Let's talk about the offense very quickly. Just 5 turnovers in this game, which is already low, but really just 2 when it mattered. It was 2 turnovers only until some way through the fourth quarter. And then, like you said, Jake, the Kings, they knocked that lead down to 12. It was looking a little dicey. I know I was
you have to
there was a real clench going on in my house.
We're tight. That's
tight.
Yeah, that's tight. Just PTSD. That's not our fault.
Tighter than the Celtics defense in the first 3 quarters, the Sphincters were. But, they punch back, which is really, really good to see. They absorbed that fight from the Kings and pushed it back onto them. So 5 turnovers, 2 when it mattered. The Kings, by the way, 14 turnovers. Incredible. The Celtics had 33 assists. They averaged just 26, which isn't terrible per game this season. Points in the paint, 56-38 in favor of the Celtics. Second chance points, 17-5 in favor of the Celtics. Fast break points, 8-2 in favor of the Celtics. And then the down tick here, unfortunately, 69% on free throw shooting. Nice, but not great.
Not nice.
Tatum is the absolute culprit there. But before we get to that, can we just focus a little bit on the fluidity of this offense and how it was born out of, the fluidity of the defense, I suppose?
It does help to be playing the Sacramento Kings. The rim protection, not exactly there. What we love, first offensive possession. We spoke about it last podcast. Spoonie's been on it. We've all been on it. Celtics Twitter's on it. Tatum post up. The first possession of the game. And they went to it a lot. I think at one point, Mark Jones on the broadcast said that was his 5th bucket from that area. I'll have to check the numbers tomorrow. He had a nice assist to Derek White out of the post. Literally everything we spoke about last podcast happened today. And you wonder, are they not using it as much as they could or should be because it's the regular season? I know they went to it a fair bit in the playoffs last year. It felt like a playoff game today.
It did.
It really did. Like the emotion of the players on the court, the crowd, the emotion of the fans, the comments after the game.
Joe getting in his bag, like rotationally speaking as well, keeping it quite limited. Again, we'll mention Hauser and not unpack that. We will eventually.
Yeah.
But Joe tightening it up, and the post up thing is like, I don't know, do they listen to the podcast? Because
they must.
Not only were we harping on that, but we released a clip on Twitter, earlier today before the game.
Viral tweet.
Again, incredibly viral. Yeah, I think every citizen of the internet ended up seeing that one, which was incredible. But yeah, getting into the paint, kicking, swinging, shooting, driving, everything we love, a mirror image of what was successful in November. And then the third quarter, like as if it wasn't sexy enough, the third quarter comes around, the Kings go back to their like hitting shit ways. And if we thought the Kings were hitting shit, the Celtics were hitting like everything in that moment. That was maybe the most exhilarating stretch of basketball I can remember in recent days, weeks, months. What do you think, Jake?
I mean, we had it all. It was Marcus Smart getting downhill, wrap around, pass, kick, Jaylen Brown 3. Jaylen, man, he is on a tear, and we're gonna get all kinds of into Jaylen Brown today, I'm sure, as I'm sure he's keen for. But look, we had Tatum to the rim, like this move on De'Aaron Fox where De'Aaron Fox fouled him aggressively twice. Tatum. And this was part of the playoff stuff. It was like, it reminded me of the way KD was like playing him so aggressively in the series that they beat us in 5 games. And that 50-point game from Tatum where that mid-high post range kind of like body, and then just like a little bit of footwork, like splash, like 16, 17 footer. Kind of had it all offensively. Maestro Marcus, Jaylen dunking.
Playing all the hits, baby. Playing all the hits. Jaylen, like, kind of looks like MJ. Obviously, is not MJ in any way, shape, or form, but the aesthetic is there. There's certainly a similarity. We've got some clips here. Speaking of Jaylen Brown, and we're gonna get more into Jaylen Brown because obviously his name has been circulating on Twitter in the last 24 hours because of that Ringer article, but just some classic Jaylen Brown celebrating with his teammates moment. So we'll start with this one, Jake. I'm going to get you to talk through these because you've uploaded them to the stream here. But these are really important to look at, just based on judging Jaylen Brown's vibe, given what was said, in the article recently.
Yeah, I thought these clips. Marcus is downhill and one on Keegan Murray. Jaylen's the first one to come pick him up. And it's just aggressive, boom, chest bump.
Huge.
Like Marcus is tough because I know for a fact that would have knocked me over. And then Tatum comes in, daps up Marcus. And like literally just the play before, we have Marcus, a little screen slip, bang, yams it on.
Fucks up the net.
Kings. Yeah. Like this kind of emotion that Jaylen and the guys are playing with, we haven't seen it for a little while. And I think it just speaks to where these guys' heads were at. They know they've been in a funk. Jaylen's passing, by the way, in this game. Dump off to Rob. Timeout Kings. This is the turning point in the game. Go up 42-39. Daps up his boy from Atlanta, Malcolm Brogdon.
Hand-shattering dap up there. That was aggressive.
Ouch. I think, and like Jaylen, pretty even keeled. For the most part, when whether it's going well or whether it's going bad, you can kind of say the same for Tatum. This is kind of the most emotion I feel like I'd seen Jaylen show in a while, and I think that means something. I think that's informative, and for it to come today, look, we all were feeling it. Going into the game, I'm convincing myself this game doesn't matter. It's one game, end of a road trip. The Kings have the best offense. But
Very zen.
that's a lie. Those are all lies.
Yeah.
Those are all lies. I didn't believe any of that. And these guys obviously felt the same way because they came out and played with that level of intensity. And when they play with this level of intensity and focus, committed to their principles on offense, paint touches, leading to threes, not because there was a little bit of, quick passes leading to bad threes, but for the most part, sticking to their principles, attacking the paint, letting the threes open the paint and vice versa, which is beautiful.
A 90% success rate on the playing the right way scale, and thank God for that. And Jaylen Brown, 27 points on 62.5% shooting, so efficient. 5 rebounds, 4 assists as well, and just like filling the gaps left for him by Tatum. And again, in this day where his role and his long-term future on the team is called into question, to see him perfectly supplement Jayson Tatum and yet still lead the team in his own way, it was just so important for optics. So really good to see. And Jaylen Brown, post-game, he said, that looked like the team I recognize. We came out, we played 48 minutes, we didn't take our foot off the gas, and we took care of business. Summed it up perfectly. Let's get into some individual performances from this one. I promise we will get to Hauser. I don't know if anyone cares. We've teased.
Yeah,
is that the right word?
Ben's getting to Hauser.
Hauser.
If you listen for long enough, we're getting to Sammy buckets at some point.
Stay tuned. Jayson Tatum, 36 points, 8 boards, 4 assists, 2 steals, improved team defense. I don't know if he necessarily had any individual defensive highlights, but he really used his length and his agility to, I don't want to say lead the team defensively because it was more Rob and Marcus, but Tatum, I feel like he elevated his game defensively and he didn't have as many mistakes that we've grown used to seeing from Jayson Tatum. 56% from the line, Jake, which is concerning. What are your thoughts on Tatum's game? It was mostly good, but there were some concerning signs.
I'm not actually concerning. I'm not worried about Tatum's free throw shooting, but
Sure.
But dude, you just cost yourself a 40 ball. What are you doing? How many did he miss? 6 free throws?
He was 6 for 11, I think. So
yeah, okay. So how many times does he just make all of those except for one? Jason. You're missing out on all the graphics and the things that say 40 points. That's just leaving. And to be honest, that
back
little
in the
bit
MVP conversation.
Exactly. That little moment of stress that everybody felt when the lead got down to 12. I was like, Jason, you made 3 of those free throws. It would still be a 15-point lead. But thankfully, we're not sitting here being like, they played really well. If only they'd made their free throws, they would have won this game. We didn't have to do that.
And Tatum came back in at that most dire moment in the fourth and just took total control of the game again. And it was over from that point, which is, we fall in love with individuals throughout the course of a season, but clearly Tatum is the captain at the helm as far as regaining control of games.
No question. And your point on the defense, Tatum, I think, he doesn't really deserve a lot of defensive adulation this season for because it's been in and out. It's been big games. He's been there. Rockets game was Nets game, disaster. But when he is playing defense, it doesn't quite jump off the screen like Marcus's or Derek's or Rob's, especially when he's playing locked in. His best attribute when it comes to defense is help defense, as you said. And so when he's locked in, he's like a baby Giannis. He's big, he's long, passing lanes get far more difficult for things to get through. It just slows down the other team's offense. It's just this overall aura. I think when Tatum's locked in, it leads to the rest of the team being locked in defensively as well, which is, part of the frustration, I think, because the team goes as your best player goes. But when he's locked in on defense, I think it raises the level of everyone else around him on top of obviously what he's bringing to the table defensively. And then what I loved, we spoke about the post-ups already, but the shot chart, the shot profile, 7 3-point attempts. And it reminds me of the Cavs game where he had 6 3-point attempts where he was 4 for 6. Today he was only 2 for 7. But I think 7, max 8 needs to be the number here. I've got the shot chart up on YouTube here. You've got 7 3-point attempts. you got 4 mid-range attempts, 2 for 4, and then 10 for 14 attempts at the rim. 71%, which is just above his 70% mark for the season, which is really good, where 60% is league average there.
Mm-hmm. Incredible.
Perfect. And by listening to the Kings broadcast, which I did, but just because I was watching on delay, and sometimes if you watch the Celtics one or you try and change, it can give you spoilers. Mark Jones gave a tidbit that Tatum did an extra session with Drew Hanlon today or yesterday in kind of preparation or to kind of try and bounce back from the slump that he's having. And you wonder the change in the approach today, the less threes, the post touches, the mid-range stuff, getting to the rim. I think it's one of those things where it's hard to point to one factor because I think there was a team, like everybody just being locked in and up for this game, whether it was just Tatum's specific approach. I think there was a lot of things you could point to, but all these things you'd like to see because it means they're taking this seriously. Everybody likes to say, then they're not caring about the regular season. Where's the fire? Like these guys care. I don't know how you can doubt that at this point. But I think that's a cool little piece of information. Like whether he flew Hanlon in or he was already out there to get an extra session in on top of the shoot around to kind of tighten some of this stuff up. It's whatever it did paid off tonight.
Oh, I'm sure that Drew Hanlon made Tatum foot the bill for that flight out to Sacramento or wherever they caught up. But it's a good sign that he really cares.
Yes, I did call out Drew Hanlon last.
Spoonie. Good morning, Wade Spoonie. Calling out in the chat.
Morning, Spence.
Second pot in a row. That's amazing. Marcus Smart had a rough start to the game. He had maybe his worst shooting sequence of all time, where he was it Lord. 3 or 4 shots that
3 in a row.
Just the angle, the camera angle on the broadcast, you could see them sort of curve off almost like a boomerang. They were terrible shots. And then he got one from the far wing from the broadcast perspective. I think he missed that first option as well, and then finally made the second one, starting to get some repetition there. And then he went on this insane end of the second quarter run where it was a layup, an assist to Horford, which was a 3, an assist to Jaylen Brown, also a 3. Then drew 2 of the most Marcus Smart offensive fouls of all time. Just insane, just going to get tangled up. He got tangled up with Sabonis. He got tangled up with someone else as well. Drew some crazy offensive fouls. So despite those clanker 3-point attempts, he was really the catalyst for that late first half surge that put the Celtics in a good position to take off, and they absolutely did beginning the second half. Smart's still working his way back, but maestroed his way through the end of the second quarter to put the Celtics in a position to win. And then through the second quarter was more of the lovable Marcus Smart, less shot attempts, less assertion overall, particularly in the offense, and more just being a cog in the machine rather than a standout and flawed character. What do you think of Smart's performance in this game overall?
Yeah, 4 field goal attempts in the second half.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, 11 in the first half. I didn't think any of them were particularly bad shots. There was no early shot clock pull-ups. Most of them came off catch and shoot, which is where you want him taking them. But there are a couple that he could have easily pump faked, drove, kicked. There was plenty of time for him to kind of keep the offense moving, considering you had almost murdered 2 people in the stands with your previous 2 3-point attempts.
Yes.
They were so bad. But this is why Marcus Smart is a playoff guy. How many humans have 3 just disgusting attempts on the road where everybody's going air ball, which you can hear, and then he makes the next one, and then he just doesn't lose confidence, and then he makes in the third quarter, right in front of the Kings bench, they're yelling all kinds of nonsense right at him. Bang, turns around, he's like, I was always making it. What are you talking about? I airball 3 just before. This is the kind of confidence that he has, which is why he makes big shots. He just does. He's done it that many times. And when they're the right type of shots, these are just his career shooting splits pretty much, right? He was 40 and 33 today. This is the kind of what you expect. You just want it to be on 10 total shots as opposed to 15 total shots, which is what we saw in the second half. It was more Maestro Marcus taking the opportunistic field goal attempts.
Yeah, and the 4 field goal attempts, like you said, Jake, in the second half is a very important chapter in the story of how this game went. 30 minutes. We've got to really rattle through the rest of this. I want to try and surely two of us in talking about one game, we can keep this under 50 minutes.
You would
Derek
think.
White, Robert Williams, Grant Williams. Those are the 3 individual performances I want to get to before we move on. Derek White, 20 points, 11 assists, 7 boards. Like we said, played in the fourth quarter and had a game-high 2 blocks. Did Derek White assert himself in this game in any way that you have not seen recently, or was it just a result of the additional minutes, like the deserved minutes, you might say, that he actually got in this game?
Look, he was 5 for 10 from 3, so you can't expect that. But even if he goes 3 for 10 from 3, which is well below his season average, like this is still let me do the quick math. 16 point, 12 assist, 7 rebound, 2 block game.
Yeah.
The mistress was out and about tonight. Like
killing the math lately as well, Jake. I got to say, that's just
the All-Star,
the cogs are turning there.
Look, someone actually got ready for the post All-Star break as opposed to the Celtics. But Derek White, 37 minutes. Like this is the guy that, yes, my future wife has chimed in here. The
I was going to
mistress,
say, that's your actual fiance, right?
yeah, the
Shout out
fiance has
to
chimed in.
Lucy.
The irony. She's welcomed the mistress into the family with open arms.
So good.
This is why we're calling for it. 37 plus minutes from Derek White. He's the guy that can take the load from these guys, especially on a night like tonight. And you got to give Joe credit. Like he was searching last game, of games to not play Derek White. 0 fourth quarter minutes, inexcusable, but against a team with 3 7-footers in their closing lineup, you can at least understand it. To see him, he's got to be listening to the podcast between the Tatum post-ups, Derek White minutes. Joe's got to be tuning in. Honestly, a perfect game from Derek, and he should have been playing 30 to 35 every game.
Robert Williams, I thought. We spoke about him earlier, so we can move on pretty quickly. But did just enough. Played, just under 21 minutes. Was the defensive anchor for the most part during his minutes, and playing single big. Just watching Rob drop and navigate Sabonis the way that he did, and so naturally as well. Like you'd think that he'd be out of rhythm. Not just missing this recent stretch, but missing a significant amount of games this season, and really comes back with a slight defensive masterclass, which is really good. He said after the game that he felt good. You could see him sort of hopping around and being quite agile in his defensive coverages as well. He had a few good rolls and cuts to the basket offensively, so it's great that we're limiting his minutes. He certainly hasn't lost a step. If anything, he's gained half a step. Like he actually seems really quite healthy, which is really good. And you've added a quote here to the run sheet, Jake. I'm going to steal it and read it out.
Yeah, please do.
Tatum, having Rob back makes a world of difference. That's clear. What did you think, Jake?
Yeah, this is impressive to come back and have that much of an impact straight off the bat. You can't overstate how important he is to this team and their ability to win a title, to just collect regular season wins. Like your margin of error is completely different when Robert Williams is on the court from the offense, the rim pressure and the offensive rebounding to the defense. Like he's just so much better than Luke Cornett. He's so much better. And this is the thing. This is what I've been saying. 20 minutes of Rob is plenty to beat every single team in the NBA. Plenty. That's all we need. It's enough. We got this guy Al Horford who's just been stealing Rob's youth somehow. I don't know what he's been doing, but he should be sharing it at least a little bit more than what he's been doing.
Well, yeah, and if we play that single big rotation and it can limit Al Horford's minutes as well, then there's a double benefit there. So I hope to see that at least I don't want to use the word coast because we've got some sub 500 teams coming up, and as soon as
Don't say
we
it.
talk about coasting against those teams, or
I
we might
know.
go 0-3 against some
I know.
seemingly easy opponents coming up. But I like the rotation as it was today, and hopefully that's something that Joe can stick to, because he ain't stuck to nothing so far this season. Grant Williams, solid defensively, didn't over-assert himself anywhere, had some, quote, Johnny on the spot moments, as Sean Grandy put it, and in this particular game, he wins the First of the Floor award for First of the Floor, presented by First of the Floor, as we run a clip here of Grant Williams. Really, this is when the game was starting to get, I don't want to say dire, but called into question a little bit. And look at him, just
This is a big
flying
play.
on the floor. Yeah, huge.
This is a big play.
And huge for endearing himself, back to the fan base and to the team as well, because we've long suspected that he's become so annoying as a person that no one likes him anymore. Shout out to Gil, who I hope isn't hearing us say this, Gil, Grant's father. But for him to throw himself on the floor like that, a la Blake Griffin, is hugely endearing to everyone. And it's something that we want to see, is like role players finding a way to impact the game that isn't like aggressively shot faking and driving into triple coverages and turning the ball over. This is a nice response game from Grant Williams.
Yeah, look, early, I was a little concerned. There were a couple moments that he just got blown by, and I'm like getting to write, like just in my notes, like, here we go again. Can't stay in front of anybody. But then it was forced to travel on Harrison Barnes, like stayed in front of De'Aaron Fox. Malcolm Brogdon had the fast break and he missed it. Guess who was there to tip it in? Grant Williams. Like, first to the floor. This is like, he didn't hit a single three, 1 3-point attempt. And if you were to tell Celtics fans that Grant Williams had one of his best games in a while and he didn't make a single three, very, very surprising. So the fact, and this is what you need to be doing if you're Grant. This is your role. Your role is gritty eighth man. You need to be diving on the floor. You got to be playing defense. You got to be any fast break. You got to be busting your ass back. Or if your own team is fast breaking, like he did today, you got to be down there in case Malcolm Brogdon misses the layup, which he's prone to do. 2 for 8 today.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you need. You got to be busting. You be grinding.
Yeah. He was busting and grinding, all right.
Busting and grinding.
Yeah, we just need to see that. And I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if we didn't see that for another stretch now, but it was nice to see just everyone sort of rear their heads and put their hand up and show us, like, yes, maybe we have been coasting a little bit. Now we have a nice little data point that, the team, they still can galvanize. They still know what they're doing. They can get up against good teams. And maybe the key stat to take away from this game and the season so far is that they're 9-2 against the top 3 teams in either conference. So you might, it's one thing to suspect that they get up for these big games. You look at that stat and like they absolutely get up for these huge games. And, if only we could go into the playoffs taking that stat as like a claim to the first seed, because like in that sense, like clearly like we give a shit about playing good teams. We beat them like regularly, but unfortunately we've got to play all these other teams. We're not going to necessarily get up for all those games, and hence we've dipped a little bit in the seeding, although we are back up to second now. Thank you, Chicago Bulls.
Oh man,
what
OT.
Yeah,
Get rid of that.
Amazing. What a comforting stat, though, 9-2 against those teams, against the top teams in either conference. Are there any other takeaways to get to from this game, Jake, or can we talk about Sam Hauser for 20 seconds? Because it really doesn't matter.
Ben, look, 1 seed's not out of reach. Currently, 17% chance of getting the 1 seed. Not out of the question yet.
Crazy.
For Celtics fans, for opposing team fans that are licking their chops, salivating at the idea of the Celtics that have been collapsing in March, good luck. Good luck with that fantasy. There's nothing more Philadelphia 76er than dominating the months of February and March, only to lose in 5 games to the Boston Celtics again, just like they did in 2017-18, where they closed the season 18-1, and then lose to the Celtics in 5. These months don't matter. I'm sorry. Like, this is not an indicator of who's going to be the best in the playoffs. And
Yeah.
there will be nothing more classic than the Sixers dominating the least important games, and Embiid winning MVP, only to be swept out of the playoffs by the Boston Celtics.
Please, God, I want that to happen so much. And yeah, the months don't matter, unfortunately, for fans, and we talk about it ad nauseum. The days matter, the weeks matter, the sleepless nights, Jake, they matter.
I'm here.
But yeah, schedule-wise for the Celtics coming up, they've got the Pacers and Spurs both at home after a nice lengthy break. I'd imagine they either flew back tonight or first thing in the morning. They go back on the road against the Wizards, and then it's the Bucks, and then it's the Jazz, and then it's the Sixers. So a nice, hopefully cozy homestand, quick 2-game homestand before a few challenging road games there and a few maybe seeding-altering games. But despite it being March, despite the month not mattering, we've got some interesting games coming up. We should move on. We talked about it. It was the online narrative today prior to the Kings game, or yesterday by the time you're listening, that Logan Murdock of The Ringer wrote a pretty insightful article. It was a good article. Like, let's just call it what it is. Despite some of the negative takeaways for Celtics fans, like, this is the kind of article that I think journalists dream of writing. And Bill Simmons called it on his podcast today, like, old school journalism, and like gave Logan Murdock his kudos. The notes from the article, like, essentially the premise of the article is that Jaylen Brown is striving to strike a balance between playing the game and being known beyond it. And there's a lot of insights there. One in particular, that he struggled early in his Celtics tenure with his limited role as a 3rd overall pick, while guys like Ben Simmons, who is no longer a rotation player, and Brandon Ingram, who was traded away from Los Angeles, were flourishing on their teams. But, I can imagine at the time that would have been difficult given their roles back then. On a completely other note, on the other side of the coin, it refers to Marcus Smart as, quote, Jaylen's best friend on the team, which I think is news to me and probably most Celtics fans. It talks about Kyrie Irving. He says in the article that me and Kyrie didn't really see eye to eye when we were there, really at all. And then Kyrie Irving, Kyrie Irving apparently, already with a championship under his belt, felt that it was his responsibility to help facilitate Brown's ambitious goals and guide the young Celtics into contention for years to come. But Irving, surprise, surprise, now admits he missed the mark. I guess, we can go back and forth on the quotes and, the little nuggets and tidbits from this article, but what were your main takeaways? And I guess, how do you feel about Jaylen and his spot on the team long-term going forward, Jake?
Oh, man. It's a lot to digest as a fan.
Yeah. Yes.
It's really hard, because all we really want is for everybody to be happy, kumbaya, wear the Celtics uniforms for 10 more years, win a championship, hopefully, along the way. But, everybody's human, and the dynamics of this NBA business can be pretty ruthless. And it sucks that there's like the racism element that Jaylen's had to deal with, and the black athletes in Boston have had to deal with. So, like, you empathize so much with all of that stuff. And then on the other hand, like, I thought, like, a lot of the stuff online today about Jaylen leaving the team, like, there was only a couple of quotes and a couple of little tidbits that really spoke to, like, Jaylen's commitment, and so much of it was more about Jaylen as a person from his college days, his activism, stuff with Kanye or Ye and Kyrie, that I think speaks to Jaylen more as a person, and we can get caught up in the little bits as Celtics fans with him staying with the team or not. I think you could, if you don't want to read it and you want, like, the quick takeaway, it's like, I want to feel respected. I want to feel wanted by my employer. And so when the Celtics have the chance, they better call him up and be like, this is the maximum that we can offer you. We want to keep you for as long as we can. The Durant trade stuff, I think that was definitely, and Bill Simmons talked about it in his pod, that was definitely a moment. The Tatum uploading the photo of him and Durant working out in the midst of the rumors, terribly tone deaf. Yes. And I think that just speaks to specifically Tatum kind of not really being involved with this stuff. Like we love him
Yes.
being the low maintenance superstar. I truly believe that he did not think that it would cause any issues. Because if he did, I don't think he would have done it. He just doesn't. He's like the definition of I just want to play basketball and like hang out with my kid and like have fun. Like we don't get any drama stuff. He doesn't get involved with the GM stuff. So but that thing, I think that tipped Jaylen over the edge a little bit.
Totally. We talk about him being wise beyond his years, but that was like the quintessential, at the time, I'm a 24-year-old dude moment, and like not necessarily thinking about the feelings of other people, which we've all been there. So forgiveness, I think, is the theme coming out from that, but maybe apparently not from Jaylen Brown, who obviously felt struggling enough to sort of bring it up in this article. Alarm bells for me, Jake, were at like a like a 4 out of 10 reading the actual article. Everything in context, reading the article. I didn't think that the takeaway quotes, which then circulated on Twitter, which I read first, which had me at a 10 out of 10 as far as alarm bells. Read the articles, people. That's the advice, because everything in its proper context is really important. And then Jaylen Brown had some post-game quotes, which we'll get to, where he sort of called out the fact that even those quotes, which felt like they were in the right context in the article, may have actually been taken out of context as far as like the actual interviews that he did with the author, Logan Murdock. And then notes from the Bill Simmons pod, Bill Simmons' biggest takeaway as to why Jaylen Brown might be disgruntled is that the Celtics didn't handle the Kevin Durant for Jaylen Brown trade rumors well, which I suppose is right in some degree, in that they didn't just go out, like Bill Simmons said on his pod, and explicitly call out, we do not want to trade Jaylen Brown. But, if you think about the Celtics' lack of voice in that moment, it's consistent with their lack of voice and their lack of, publishing anything as far as their front office's conversations. It's consistent with that. Like we never know what's going on. It was the same with the Mike Muscala trade. It was the same with the Derek White trade. Like what's going on behind the scenes with the Celtics is never publicized, at least within the Brad Stevens regime. And so not hearing from the Celtics during that Kevin Durant for Jaylen Brown saga is at least consistent with that. And so obviously I know nothing, but I would hope that the conversation was at least consistent and ongoing with Jaylen Brown and Brad Stevens, as far as like, no, dude, like we're not going to trade you. We love you. And now Kevin Durant, he's out, he's injured, at least until the postseason. Jaylen Brown is playing maybe the best basketball over his entire career. That feels quite good. Do you think there's something to that? The Celtics mishandled, the conversation and the optics in that particular part of the offseason before this particular season started?
If Jaylen thinks they did, then they did. The reality is you need to keep your other franchise superstar happy, in the loop. It sounds like they kind of smoothed it out. Jaylen did the 3-way call with Tatum and Brad, get the vibes.
Yeah.
I do think like Logan Murdock and the way that he talks about the Jays and the Celtics, when I listen to his podcast with Roger Bell, I've never really thought that he has his finger on the pulse when it comes to the Celtics. And when he was speaking about on the podcast today with Simmons, and who am I, right? Like this guy's got actual sources, and like he's the one having a real conversation with Marcus Smart and Kyrie Irving and Jaylen Brown. But I don't think he's watching every Celtics game and watching all the post-game interviews and like we are, like psychopaths. The idea that, the Ainge regime reputation, like Jaylen's a smart guy. Like he understands all these rumors, like the AD stuff didn't happen. The Paul George, Jimmy Butler, like all of these rumors, he's still here. Like they never traded him. They never made that move. So I think that, this reputation of the Celtics, from the IT trade, like they're the only team, like the fact that that's even coming up is so outrageous. Like Harrison Barnes got traded on the bench in the middle of a game, like that we all saw. Like there are so many examples of like people just like, getting traded and people leaving. The fact that the Celtics are singled out in this way is kind of ridiculous to me. But yeah, the post-game comments today after the game, the quote from Jay King, maybe we should do that now, definitely made me feel better. The fact that you're at a 4 out of 10, like that's a Ben Vallis 4 out of 10, which is like a normal person 2 out of 10, I feel.
Amazing.
But yeah, I think if we pull them, I've got them up on the YouTube there. But on his recent comments, how do you feel? I feel great. I'm on a 50-win team right now. You can't take that for granted. Tonight was their 50th win. I'm focused on helping to lead my team for another playoff run. In terms of speculation, etc., I can't speculate on anything above what I'm doing right now. I think sometimes people write articles, they get taken out of context, especially when writers have their own agendas or whatever. So for me personally, I'm thinking about clarifying some of those things that have been recently said. But other than that, I'm just focused on my team. I'm focused on playing basketball and winning games. Goes on to ask him like what he's going to clarify. But the fact that he doesn't feel like he was represented properly in that article, I think it's a big deal. But then part of me is also like, Jaylen, you did the articles. Like two obviously came out in like you understand how the media works, but then on the third side of the coin, I know that he's trying to build that platform to have the influence that he's, positively having on his community and other communities, around the world, really.
And Bobby Manning pointed out on Twitter that, the interview was actually conducted in January. I don't know if that means anything other than it's like really in the like crucial doldrums of the NBA season where like you're so fatigued from the beginning and there's no end in sight. You haven't even made the All-Star break yet, that the tone of the comments that you might get from whatever NBA athlete that you're interviewing at that particular juncture of the season, that might come into play. But it was really, I think, important and certainly just a relief as fans to hear Jaylen address it in the way he did. He was prompted, I think, by Jay King after the game, so it's not like he just spoke off the cuff, but it was good to see him respond the way he did. A couple of other things from the Bill Simmons pod, like he talked about the Ainge regime. You touched on it a second ago, Jake, that like the optics from trading Isaiah Thomas would still be a factor for how other people consider the Celtics, and that the Brad Stevens regime haven't done enough to rebuild their reputation. That's something that I just straight up disagree with. It's
crazy.
It shouldn't be a lack of actions that are assessed in terms of like rebuilding. Like, what's Brad Stevens supposed to do other than build the best team possible? Like, go out of his way to enact certain trades and acquisitions to to make up for, to get forgiveness for the IT thing that he wasn't even responsible for. Like, no, his role was to build the best team possible. So, like, we shouldn't be looking for Brad to atone for Danny Ainge's sins, right? Like, we should just be looking for him to do what he has been doing awesomely, which is building the best possible roster and, by all accounts, keeping everyone, including Jaylen Brown, happy. Speaking of Jaylen Brown, and to wrap up here, Jake, I say speaking of Jaylen Brown like we haven't been talking about him for the last 10 minutes.
Speaking of.
do you think he's likely to make All-NBA? And do you think that his making All-NBA and the Celtics' then eligibility to sign him to a Supermax extension will be enough to keep him around? And do you want that to happen? Do you want us to spend that much of our salary distribution on Jaylen Brown?
Yeah, to that last bit, yes.
I agree. Yes, me too.
Like you have to keep Jaylen and Jayson together at all costs. And with the speculating around the cap spiking with the new TV deal, Jaylen Supermax is not going to feel like a big deal in a couple of years anyway. It's razor thin. So you've got All NBA first team. It's Embiid, Giannis, Tatum, Luka, SGA. The tricky part is going to be whether or not Jaylen is a guard or a forward. It makes no sense to me that he would be stuck as a guard when he's played more minutes as a forward this season. Because if he's a guard, I just don't think he gets ahead of Luka, SGA, Mitchell. The games played stuff for guards is terrible. Like, Steph can only get to 56. Ja can only get to 64. Dame can kind of get up there. But like Booker's got 44. Kyrie's got 53. Trey's not going to make it. Harden can get up there, and then Garland. So Jaylen, again, will be fringe in the guards, But forwards, it's like, here we go. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 guys for 4 spots who are all like pretty close.
Mhm.
It's Jaylen, Jimmy Butler, Larry Markkinen, DeMar DeRozan, Julius Randle, and Pascal Siakam. Those are the 6 guys.
See, I say put out Pascal and DeMar DeRozan immediately. Like
It should be easy. Yes.
They don't hold a candle to Jaylen Brown.
No, you cannot. The only tricky part I think there is like, how much do you weigh? Like, how much are you penalizing Jaylen for being the number 2 versus DeMar and Siakam being the number 1? And this is where these things are so subjective. I agree. Like, are you going to reward Siakam and like DeMar DeRozan for being the 10th seed? Worse numbers, like overall. Like if you switch DeMar and Jaylen, does Jaylen have better numbers than DeMar? Probably much higher numbers this season. I think I'm not a huge advanced stats guy, but like I put like the raw points, rebounds, assists, and then like true shooting, expected plus minus Raptor, box plus minus VORP, win shares. I put it all in the thing. Jaylen does not grade out super well on the advanced stats relative to some of the other guys. From what I can tell, I think Jimmy and Larry Markkinen are gonna be locks there. And then I think it's Jaylen and Julius Randle. But like if you're comparing Jaylen and Julius Randle is the second best player on the 5th seed. The numbers are very similar. Jaylen's the number 2 guy on the team with the second best record in the NBA. I think he's gonna, if it ended today, he would sneak in, but like you just don't know how it's gonna go.
Yeah, and then you're keeping it subjective. How much of a factor is narrative? It's clearly a factor with the MVP conversation. So why would it not be a factor where voting among the media is involved for the All NBA teams? And keeping with the narrative, the Celtics have, I want to say quote unquote slumped, but they have slumped recently, and almost all of their success, at least offensively, outside of today's game, yesterday's game, by the time you're listening to this, has been courtesy of Jaylen Brown. And that has to be huge in bolstering, narratively speaking, his case for All NBA. So I certainly hope, I think everyone, after reading all the news today, is hopeful that he can make All NBA, because giving the Celtics any leverage in terms of extending him and keeping him around, and in this case it would be monetary leverage and being able to offer him more money. If he makes All NBA, that's huge for being able to keep the Jays together, and we kind of make Jaylen's decision easy as far as what his future looks like, at least in his immediate subsequent seasons in the NBA. Before we wrap it up, Jake, I can see you got another take barreled up there. What do you got?
I'm not sure I should tell you this because I feel like this is a Ben thought almost, in that I have this worry. I'm not sure if it's a real worry or a story I've made up in my mind, but like this anti-Boston sentiment, people want to see us fail around the NBA on, NBA media. Like, would people vote not to give Jaylen All NBA because that means it's more likely for Jaylen to not stay with the Celtics? Probably reading too deep into it, but like it does. It's just like,
I was hoping for a good sleep tonight, Jake.
I can help you. I can help you get back to sleeping well. Zach Lowe last season said, I do tend to lean towards voting for guys that have a monetary incentive. So like a lot of these guys, like, Randall's he's not up for an extension. Markin is not up for an extension. DeRozan's not up for an extension. Like Jaylen Brown stands to benefit more than the guys he's up next to. And if Zach Lowe says this one line, I might just lean Jaylen Brown because it's that close, because he can make a lot more money and I don't feel comfortable not voting for him and costing him $100 million. If he says that, we're in. We're good. Throw a parade for Zach Lowe.
Well, and also Jayson Tatum was so vocal about like him missing out on millions of dollars because he didn't make All NBA when he was up for an extension as well. So does that favor Jaylen Brown in essentially the makeup call from the media voting perspective as far as getting him eligible for that Supermax extension? Certainly with the projected cap increase, like you said, Jake. Like, just give him the money. Like, keep him around because, like, even if you
No-brainer.
get a sense that he's going to leave and you try and trade him for pieces, like, you're not going to get anyone as good as Jaylen Brown. And plus, we just want to see these guys win together.
I want to
Genuinely
grow old with
love
these guys.
people.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Come on.
Yeah. All right. Okay. How do we always do an hour, no matter how many people we have on, no matter what the sample size of games we're talking about? We always make it to a crisp hour. There we go as we tick over the 1 hour mark.
We love the Celtics.
We do. We just love them so much. It's the passion. It's the passion that
Yeah.
keeps us talking about them for at least an hour every time we catch up. That is, however, going to do it for this one. Thank you so much for joining us. At this stage, we might be firing up our playback room for the Spurs game on Sunday night, and then definitely for the Bucks game on the 30th of March. So sign up to our playback room if you haven't already. The link is in the description. There's always so much fun to be had in those playback rooms. Please, come along if you haven't already. We're really having a good time in those rooms. We'll be back with another pod early next week. Jake, love your work, mate. Until next time, go Celtics.